This artifact, which is 8,000 years old, will shatter a global stereotype and prepare the world for a new recognition. Yes, Georgia is the homeland of wine. This is what the world's most influential scientific journal will say, beginning the history of wine with Georgia.
This is living grape pomace, the fermented mass. This is your cloudy Caucasian wine, which produces this kind of aroma. And you will find vessels like these nowhere else in the world. Only we have them. The archaeology of Georgia is, in fact, the archaeology of viticulture and winemaking.
The first metal drinking horn dates back 3,500 years. Europe's oldest patron deity of wine is the Georgian Badagoni. He is hundreds of years older than the Greek Dionysus and the Roman Bacchus.
The science of winemaking studies the relationship between the territory, the soil, and the vine. Everything that gives wine its distinctive and unique characteristics. Wine begins in the vineyard.
Palynologist Eliso Qvevri was a member of the scientific team that spent several years examining residues found inside 8,000-year-old artifacts. The main sources of information were expected to be microscopic organisms, pollen, for example, or even a tiny winefly, which 8,000 years ago fell into wine just as successfully as it does today. What is interesting is that the hair of the winefly does not decompose because it contains chitin. It remains preserved just like a grain of pollen. It can survive in wine for 5,000, 6,000, or even more years. As you know, wine contains alcohol. Alcohol is a very good preservative, and that is why all microscopic remains found in it can be preserved. How did ancient humans manage to create and control such a complex technological process? What was happening in Georgia 8,000 years ago? What processes connected this development with settled agricultural life?
In general, this process is known as the Neolithic Revolution. From the very beginning, the Caucasus was considered one of the earliest centers of agriculture. Naturally, one of the earliest farming societies developed here, alongside the oldest civilizations of the Near East.
The way of life changed radically. Humans began domesticating animals and plants. They brought wild grapevines from nearby forests and planted them close to their homes and settlements.
During the Neolithic period, 8,000 years ago, and perhaps even 9,000 years ago, according to current assumptions, the grapevine grew wild. People then gradually domesticated it. This did not happen in a single year, of course. It required several centuries. By 8,000 years ago, the vine had already been domesticated.
The famous scientist Nikolai Vavilov based his theory precisely on this evidence. He stated that the southern Caucasus was the exact region where the domestication of the grapevine took place. On the Marnoli Plain, where the well-known Neolithic settlements of the Shulavivi culture are located, people were already cultivating domesticated grapevines. They pressed the grapes, and naturally the juice became wine, which they apparently enjoyed drinking.
Every product obtained from the grapevine became an essential part of human life.
We have a very large collection in storage. It contains 525 items, or perhaps around 500, but in any case, these are our artifacts. Where did the grapevine spread from? It spread from here, from Georgia, to the rest of the world. Many countries may have their own stories and make many claims, but I believe with all my heart that it spread from our country, because no one has a wine culture greater than ours.
The domestication of the grapevine and the technology of winemaking began on the territory of modern-day Kartli and spread throughout the civilized world.
These people possessed this knowledge and shared it with the societies of their time. Then the wine culture began its journey. It spread to Egypt and moved on to Greece. From Greece, it reached Sicily, and after Greece and Sicily, the Roman Empire became the greatest force to spread this culture throughout Europe. And all of this began with the Shulavivi culture 8,000 years ago.
This artifact comes from Shulavivi and is 8,000 years old. Traces of wine were also discovered inside this vessel. This means that 8,000 years ago, People here were already producing wine, placing it in a Qvevri and storing it in a calm, cool, and secure environment.
A vine domesticated 8,000 years ago cannot tolerate human neglect. For thousands of years, the wine grower and the grapevine have been engaged in a continuous dialogue. They constantly teach one another something new. Look at these rose bushes planted along the rows of vines. This is also an example of knowledge that humans have accumulated from observing the vine. In a sense, the vine tells the grower, "When you see that the rose planted among my rows has become sick, it means that I am also in trouble. Help me."
Planting roses in vineyards is one of the world's oldest traditions. The Sumerians said, "Where the gods press wine, roses stand as guardians of the vineyard."
Wine growers use roses for a practical reason. Diseases, including powdery, mildew, and especially downy mildew, appear on roses earlier than on grapevines. The rose gives the grower an early warning, allowing the necessary measures to be taken to protect the vineyard.
The spiritual leaders of the ancient world, the priests, made wine sacred and began using it in ritual ceremonies. What kind of ritual was performed by the priestly caste in ancient Georgia? This is the Trialeti silver cup. It is more than 4,000 years old. The people participating in the ritual wear masks on their faces. They hold cups in their hands and move towards the principal deity. What ritual does this procession depict? It is difficult to say. That remains the secret of the priests who participated in it. This drinking horn is 3,500 years old. It was made from antimony bronze.
We call an object ritualistic when this is confirmed by the circumstances and position in which it was discovered inside a burial. The drinking horn was found near the deceased person's heart. It appears to have been hanging on his chest. Alongside the horn, other ritual objects made from antimony bronze were also found in the grave. These objects belonged only to men. Antimony bronze items of this kind have not been found in female burials. This indicates that these rituals were performed exclusively by men, not women. Alongside the ritual drinking vessel, the Tamada, the toastmaster, also appears. The Tamada was originally a priest. This bronze figurine is 2,800 years old. The artifact records the existence of the institution of the Tamada.
The ancient institution of the Toastmaster still survives today. The Tamada is the leader of the feast. In ancient times, he probably also represented the leader of the community.
The ancient part of Caucasus, particularly Ajara, is distinguished by the diversity of vessels made especially for drinking wine. Several years ago, a collective burial dating from 2,700 to 2,600 years ago was discovered in Qvevri. Tableware had been placed in the grave with the deceased. Among these objects were the oldest forms of the Colchian drinking vessels that are of particular interest to us. Wine became popular because of its ritual importance. The statistics provided by the 5 books of the Old Testament are striking. Wine is mentioned 250 times, water 220 times, and bread 200 times. In the New Testament, the first miracle performed by Christ was the transformation of water into wine. At the Last Supper, Jesus revealed the mystery to the apostles. His flesh was represented by bread, and his blood by wine. Christianity entered Georgia, and its symbol became a cross woven from grapevines. Viticulture and winemaking became inseparable attributes of the Christian religion. When Christianity arrived in Georgia, St. Nino's grapevine cross became another expression and confirmation of the values already followed by Georgians. The newly arrived religion recognized and embraced this ancient activity.
This is an enormous and unique culture, knowledge accumulated by our nation. It received proper international recognition in 2013 when UNESCO added the ancient Georgian method of making wine in Qvevri to the list of intangible cultural heritage. This is an enormous and unique culture, knowledge accumulated by our nation. It received proper international recognition in 2013 when UNESCO added the ancient Georgian method of making wine in Qvevri to the list of intangible cultural heritage.
This Qvevri maker, Zeliko Bojadze, follows one of the oldest professions in the world. Thousands of years of experimentation taught Qvevri makers that the clay used for constructing a wine vessel must be brought from higher ground. While building the Qvevri, the craftsman must also follow his intuition.
God took clay, breathed a soul into it, and created the human being. Before people learned how to obtain and work with other materials, iron, silver, gold, and everything else, their first relationship was with clay. A Qvevri made from good earth and fired properly will possess an immortal soul. It will endure.
"8,000 years of observation of the vineyard and the nature of grapes gave the Qvevri its distinctive architectural forms. The defining principle is the character of the wine and the traditional method used to produce it. A Caucasian Qvevri is shaped with broad shoulders, a wide body, and a short neck. During fermentation, grape skins, seeds, and stems all participate equally in the process.
The fermentation temperature becomes very high because of the sugar level in the harvested grapes. Only the broad body and wide shoulders of the fermentation vessel, the Qvevri, can protect it from damage caused by these high temperatures.
The Mauritian churi has a long neck and narrow shoulders. The sugar content of Mauritian grapes is comparatively moderate. Grape skins, stems, and seeds do not participate in the fermentation process in the same way.
It may be said that two principal technologies of winemaking exist in the world: the Caucasian method and the Mauritian method. Later, the Mauritian method was adapted into what became the European method, which is now called the classical method. In that system, wine is also produced without prolonged fermentation with grape skins, seeds, and stems.
In the 11th century, powerful earthquakes caused extensive destruction in Georgia. The natural disaster cracked many Qvevris. Potters responded by adopting a new technique and placing Qvevris inside stone and mortar casings. These Qvevris, encased in stone jackets, were removed from the 11th century wine cellar at Alaverdi. One Qvevri was left inside the cellar.
So many fragments of Qvevris, as well as complete vessels, were discovered that production must have served both the domestic market and foreign trade.
Georgians gave names to Qvevris and began caring for them as though they were living beings. During thunder and lightning, the lid of a Qvevri must not be opened, so that the wine does not become frightened. According to the old tradition, women were not permitted to work in the Marani. It was regarded as the hearth of the priests, where a ritual drink matured in silence. Rusudani. This Marani has two entrances. In front of each entrance stands a small Qvevri. This is a Zidash Qvevri. It is a special vessel and one of the principal sacred landmarks of the wine cellar. Zidash is wine offered for divine service, wine intended for the upper world. It stood in Georgian wine cellars even before Christianity. It is usually the smallest Qvevri. After the Christianization of Georgia, Zidash acquired Christian symbolism. The Marani was a ritual structure in every historical period. During difficult times, Christianity even permitted weddings and baptisms to be performed inside the Marani. One element of the unity between the wine cellar and the church was a sacred Qvevri that once stood both in Maranis and in churches, although it no longer survives as a living tradition. It was known as the Qvevri for the forgiveness of sins committed unknowingly. It was opened once a year, on the day after Easter. A special prayer service was created for the performance of this ritual. A trace of such a Qvevri is believed to remain in an abandoned 8th century church above the village of Shalda. Our guide is Father Georgi Gaprindashvili, a member of the Nekresi monastic brotherhood. Father Georgi himself came to this site for the first time only recently.
Georgians have an expression, neither knowledge nor sin, meaning that an act committed without knowledge is not regarded in the same way as a deliberate sin. This is not an official church rule, but a folk tradition. In the Georgian Marani, there was a Qvevri intended for sins committed through ignorance. Today, this tradition has disappeared completely, both from wine cellars and from general practice. Here, in this church, we saw a Qvevri that was opened on the second day of Easter, in a way similar to the old traditional vessel. Wine from it was drunk by those who had not received Holy Communion during the Easter celebration.
The church was abandoned long ago. The reason is unknown. Even the church's original name has disappeared from local memory. Many Qvevris lie around the church. Apparently, viticulture was once highly developed here.
Wine, together with the Qvevri, is one of the defining features of the continuity of our culture. Wine was used in the pre-Christian era, and throughout the Christian period, many rituals have also been performed through wine and with the help of wine.
Wine became one of the principal products of trade, exchange, and cooperation with the civilized world. Assyrian sources were already speaking about wine 3,500 years ago. Assyrian sources describe wine being brought from the Caucasus and traded. From the Neolithic period onward, humans began using wine and grape products for medical and therapeutic purposes. We know that grapes and grapevines have many healing properties. Consider the grape leaf. In the storage rooms of medieval monuments, we found dried grape leaves kept in places where medicines were stored. From the Middle Ages, we know with certainty that crushed grape leaves were used to stop bleeding. They were also given particularly to women.
Statistically, wine and grape products are mentioned more often than almost anything else in Georgian medical manuscripts known as Badagoni. They were used for treating wounds and were included in many different medicinal recipes whenever their properties were required.
Over the centuries, this established agricultural way of life became one of the main forces uniting the Georgian ethnic community.
For 8,000 years, this knowledge passed from father to son and from grandfather to grandson. Gradually, it ceased to be merely a craft or a branch of agriculture. It became an inseparable part of people's everyday lives and, so to speak, a mental and cultural force that united them.
What happened when a way of life formed over thousands of years around vineyards and wine collapsed? A jara, a part of historical Caucasus, was incorporated into the Muslim world. The administration of the Ottoman Empire strictly prohibited the ancient wine growers of Caucasus from pressing and consuming wine. The village visited by our film crew is located in the Machakela Valley and is called Zimoch Kutuneti. This is the village jami, the mosque. In the mosque's central hall is the Kutba wall, beside which the Muslim spiritual leader delivers the ceremonial sermon. The wall is decorated with ornaments that seem unexpected inside a mosque: a fruit-bearing, flowering grapevine, and a long-necked Colchian wine jug. At first glance, there is nothing surprising about an image of a grapevine. But a wine jug is another matter. What would have happened if the Ottoman administration had discovered that the principal wall of a mosque on Georgian territory was decorated with a fruit-bearing vine and a wine jug? Naturally, the craftsman would most likely have faced execution. The craftsman understood that danger perfectly well, but he still left this message behind.
In addition to the carved wine, grapes, and jug, a cross is also shown inside this building. Look closely. A cross is depicted in yellow, inside what resembles a daisy. It reveals the faith, culture, and customs of this valley. That is what is shown here. They left this for us so that everything could continue in the future, and so that we would know the traditions and customs from which we came.
The identity of the craftsman who decorated the mosque is unknown. He was probably a las master. These are hidden wine presses, another unexpected sight in the Machakela Valley.
When the Turks arrived, Islamization began. They started cutting down vineyards. Grapevines were ordered to be destroyed. But the Georgian people continued to practice viticulture and did not want to lose it. They began searching for concealed places where grapes could be brought and pressed in secret. At that time, this activity, wine growing and winemaking, was forbidden. There are approximately 6 hidden wine presses in this area.
This is the village of Maradidi in the old Lavana Valley. The Ottoman administration forced Georgian peasants either to break their Qvevris or fill them with stones. 250 years ago, the Gogidze family was expelled from this courtyard and forced to join the migration known as muhajiroba. Only in the 20th century were the Gogidzes able to buy back the land that had once belonged to them. They decided to plant vines on this hillside.
They began digging trenches for the vines and discovered a large number of Qvevris on the slope. Apparently, their ancestral wine cellar had once stood here. The Gogidze family informed archaeologists about the discovery. Archaeologist Izo Mbadze began studying the site. The Gogidzes cut down vines and destroyed Qvevris reflect the drama of historical cataclysms. Yet this tragedy never became an argument for hopelessness. The Gogidzes started again from the beginning.
Today, Georgian viticulture and winemaking are on a path of growth and development. This has been achieved through carefully chosen, well-calculated, and correctly implemented priorities during recent years.
This strategy is rooted in historical experience. The Georgian kingdoms gave special protection to viticulture and generously invested in its development. This is the famous Akalto Academy. It began functioning in the 11th century as one of the largest scientific and educational centers of its time. Alongside the natural sciences, students were taught the professional management of agricultural sectors that were strategically important for the country's economic development, including viticulture and winemaking. Professional and successful wine growers became some of the state's most reliable allies. That was true then, and it remains true today. Every year, people around the world drink 24 billion litres of wine. Modern science compares this volume of liquid with Niagara Falls. 24 billion litres is approximately the amount of water that flows over Niagara Falls in 2 hours. How many litres of wine does one successful Georgian wine company, Badagoni, contribute to this global total? What is the quality of the wine produced by this company? Badagoni contributes 8 million bottles of wine every year to one of the world's largest industries.
This carries an enormous responsibility, because every bottle of wine is an ambassador and a missionary before the world. Each bottle must represent the country where the grapevine was first domesticated and wine was first pressed. This is how we introduce Georgian wine to the world, help people remember it and inspire them to love it. Wine that is high quality, traditional, and, at the same time, modern. Success has its own formula and its own laws. This is the laboratory of Badagoni Winery, where wine produced from grapes grown across 400 hectares is constantly monitored. The laboratory establishes wine quality standards and analyses the aromatic spectrum, character, and caloric value of red and white grape varieties. Researchers study different territories, their soils, and the relationship between soil and grapevine. Inside Georgia, the company is also a strong supporter of traditional Qvevri wine. It was one of the initiators of the restoration and reopening of the historic Alaverdi wine cellar. Today, Qvevri wine continues its journey in this cellar according to the same principles established by the first winemakers 8,000 years ago.
The purpose of our wine cellar was not only to restore this forgotten and dormant technology, we also wanted to discover its best possible result, its finest expression as a finished wine. The result exceeded expectations. There had been a widespread belief that wine fermented and aged on grape skins would be heavy and unpleasant to drink. The opposite happened. The wine came out crystal clear. Its flavor is light, airy, and aromatic. The more time passes, the more refined its taste becomes. It gains body, and the person drinking it truly feels the character of the wine.
The modern world is actively beginning to use wine products for therapeutic purposes.
Wine possesses very serious healing properties. It has antioxidant qualities and contains many beneficial substances. The same is true of the grapevine and its other products. These possibilities have still not been used fully, neither around the world nor, especially, in Georgia.
During the reign of King Erikli II, an unprecedented measure was introduced in Georgian prisons. Sick and weakened prisoners were given wine to help restore their health. No similar precedent is known in 18th century European prisons.